Hey, back in the hack shack. Got some little pieces for these carburetors so I can finish putting them together. Welcome to Hack a Week. Got a few bits and pieces today at my local old-time hardware store that carries all kinds of neat stuff. 5mm stainless steel screws that go in these clamps. The clamps hold the rubber boots to the carburetor. Didn't have those, they were missing in action. Also got a little set screw, also known as a grub screw. Never heard it called that before, but that's a pretty neat name. I like that. A grub screw. I think I can turn this down a little bit smaller and use it on that shaft that had the little groove in it, which kept everything from moving back and forth. I think this is going to be my solution to that. Before we get started with that, oh, one more thing, a little keyway. I was missing a keyway that's on that shaft. Have to sand that down a little bit thinner. Oh, before we get started, I want to give a shout out to Aaron Miller. He is in Newfield, New York. It's on Elmira Road, called Miller's Motorworks. Got a really cool t-shirt from him when I was on my road trip this summer. I was zooming by the shop and it's kind of down off the road. I saw that it was a custom shop. Made a U-turn, came back, pulled in, said hi, and went down and chatted with him for about a half hour. He was doing some pretty neat stuff on some old Harley Davidson heads that were cracked. Had to do some welding. I hope that job went well for you, Aaron, and thanks for your time and for chatting with me that day. It was a lot of fun visiting your shop. All right, let's get to work. So these 5 by, I think they're 15mm screws go into these clamps. That's a pretty easy install. We'll just get them started like that. And then the rubber boots go on, and then these clamps go on and squeeze everything into place, and that's what's going to hold these to the engine. So we'll get to that a little bit later. Now, getting back to that one little spot right here where I have to do that little modification and put the screw in. First thing I got to do is see if I can taper this screw down. I really wish I had my metal lathe up and running, but I haven't gotten around to putting that together yet. That's going to be coming up soon because, man, I can really put that thing to work. So I think what I'll do is just chuck this up in my drill press and see if I can just use the drill press like a lathe and take a file and just start filing on the end, or even a grinder while it's spinning. And just see if I can get this end down to something that's about the width of that groove right there, which is, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's about probably 3mm wide, something like that. So I'll see what I can do with that. Hey, that didn't work too bad. Took my 4.5-inch grinder and put this in my drill press, and then just let the grinder spin against it while the drill press was going, and cleaned it up with a file afterwards, and there it is. So the next tricky part is getting this to stay in there. I got a 6mm screw, but that hole is pretty much 6mm, so I can't really tap it. I can run the screw in, and it does bite a little bit on those little staked over spots. There's 3 little spots right there. That's a little bit longer. Let's see what it does now. Push it in there all the way. Well, that's good. That pokes through quite a bit. In fact, that pokes through more than it needs to, so I can file it to just the right length. And it's actually a little bit recessed in the hole there. Good. I've got this shortened up to what looks like the right length, so let's put it all together and give it a try. I think this is going to be a good solution. These set screws are pretty hard steel, so it's not going to wear out. Let's drop that in there and see just what it does. It looks about right. Looks like it might be bottoming out on the rod, so I could take just a tiny bit off from it, but I think that's going to do the trick. Now it wiggles back and forth like that, but by the time this is staked in tight, I think we're just going to be just fine. Alright, that's one problem out of the way. Okay, next up is this keyway, which locates the lifter arm on that little slot right there onto the shaft, and this one is the right size. It drops right in, This one is one I picked up at the hardware store. It's spec'd out, not in metric, but in English it's 1/8 of an inch. So it's just a little bit too big. So I'm going to see if I can get this to get a little bit thinner than it is, maybe just with some sandpaper. Got some 150 emery cloth, an old platter from a hard drive. Why, you say? Well, because it's dead flat. It's a really good flat surface. We'll just start sanding on this thing. I think that's about right now. Yep. I actually had to get after it with a file a little bit. It was just taking too long with the emery cloth. Let's see how it fits. Not bad. It's not really tight, but it's good enough. Could put a little Loctite in there just to make sure it doesn't wiggle too much, but that's going to work just fine. It'll keep it in place. There's no real heavy-duty loading going on here. It's just this moving up and down on the throttle slides, and there are pinch bolts here too to help out. So mostly it's just to locate it in the proper position. Now we can start on the final assembly of all this linkage. I've got new boots here, part number 16154300004. Those are the boots that go over the end of the lifter arms and over the portion of the throttle slide that goes onto. Let's open those up. Let's see, looks like I just got to stretch them over here a little bit and slide them on. That's about it. I'll do that to all of them. There we go, all installed and pulled back so I have access to this area, because I'm going to need to make some adjustments on these after they get put on. So we're going to slide these two forks over these guys, lift it up a little bit. Got to finagle it around a little to get it to drop on there properly. It's a bit of a pain in the arse, quite frankly. There we go. We need to do the same thing to the other one. Alright. Now that's all in place. Now everything has got to go together from this end and sliding this way. And there are some other goodies that need to get in there too. This is the mechanism that will go on the rod and will actually open and close the throttle. This portion gets the spring on for the return spring. This assembly needs to go together under a little bit of preload. So this peg will go onto the spring right there on this side. That part of the spring rests against that peg. It's a little bit tricky. You gotta just really crank on this till you get this peg to line up in the hole. You'll see once I get it together. It's a bit tricky. There it goes. You'll see there it's preloaded with spring tension. Okay, and it's going to go on there that way. This collar is going to go on there. So there we go. First thing we got to do, get the shaft over here, slot at this end. We're going to push it through this section. I'm going to leave the first keyway out for obvious reasons. I got to run this through here. And we'll put this on. Slide it a little further. We'll get the mechanism on here. Let's see, it's got to go like that. We'll move a little bit further along. Helps if you twist this as you go. Get it started in the next arm. Well, the tricky part here when you get to this part is to keep it moving without binding it up, and that keyway is going to go into this last one here, and there's a keyway that's going to go in there. So just keep moving it along here. Now there's that keyway. Let's go ahead and get these put in. This is the one that fits really nice. This is the one that's going to fit a tiny bit loose. I'm going to drop just a little Loctite in there just because it'll just help take up any little slop that might be in there as it cures up. I want to wipe off the excess. Okay, now that's got to rotate around to the other side, so I'm going to stand the carburetors up and I'm going to turn this until I just see that keyway start to line up. And give it a little push. Same thing down here, keyway's got to line up. I'll take a plastic handled screwdriver. You could use a small hammer or a dead blow hammer. You don't want to hurt this though, don't go pounding on it. We're just going to tap it. Okay, now we can go back here and we're going to look in there and watch for that slot to show up. Here it comes. And there it is. There's the slot. Now you should have two flats on this section here. There's one right there. That's where this collar set screw is going to go, is on that flat. So we'll turn the screw in until we get on that flat spot, and it will kind of center itself where it wants to be because of the flat spot, left and right as well. And we'll move this over, turn this screw in now. That one should go into a flat spot as well. Might take a little extra turning. This one might turn a little bit harder because of the extra plating that's been added to it, the zinc plating. And that's that. And that's that one. We'll just leave them like that for now. And then we can tighten up these guys. I'm not sure if a washer went on these or not. It may have. This one on the end is a Phillips head. For what reason, I'm not sure. If I had to guess, I'd say it could be for clearance, maybe? Don't know. Not sure why that one's a Phillips and all the rest are a hex head. But we're going to tighten this up. It's going to snug that up on that shaft. Okay. Tighten these down. I'm going to see if I have washers for those. Well, there's 3 of these screws, and in my bin of little parts here I found 3 lock washers, so that kind of makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and put the lock washers on. And we'll just tighten these up. I figure just a good snug up like that should be plenty. And that is that. That's our initial install of the linkage, and now we can put in that little pin, that one right there, the one that I made. Drop that in. Use my Allen wrench just to kind of make sure it's shoved in there all the way. And now we need to peen that over just a little bit. If I stick a socket underneath there, I can just catch the edge of that casting. It'll give me at least something to hit against. Let's see if it wiggles at all. It moves around a little bit. Got a different kind of punch now here. It's an old punch that I sharpened to just a blunt end, little rectangular blunt end. Give it a couple hits with that and see what I get. That is what I'm after right there. That did the trick. That's tight. That's not wiggling, that's not going anywhere. We are done. Okay, that baby's in there. Everything still moves okay. It doesn't move back and forth very much at all. Very, very little. Good deal. Now we can make the adjustments on this side. First, we're going to put the return spring back on. Okay, there we go. Now what we're after here is just to get a baseline adjustment on these guys. When you turn these, you're going to be raising and lowering each one of these. So the trick is to get them all equal. Now if I just crank on one, it's going to affect the other ones because this linkage is all connected across here. So if I preload this one and it's starting to push down on that, it's going to raise up the other slides. So we'll just back off these top nuts a little bit. And we'll take them all until they're just flush at the top with the rod, with the threads. Just go ahead and leave them like that. And now what I'm going to do is back off the big nut. I'm going to turn it counterclockwise until it just touches that nut. Okay, now mechanically these are all equal now. The nut is flush with the top of the stud that it goes onto, and this bigger nut is backed up against it. This one could use a little bit more. Hold the nut and turn that one up to it. Now that's just a good baseline to start with. Now you can see there's a little bit of a preload in those three. Those three are floating up a little bit high. You can see that wiggle, but this one over here isn't moving at all. So what that means is it's loaded against the lever. So let's turn this one clockwise, and these are now all three lowering down a tiny bit, and I'm just going to turn that a little more until that slop goes away. The slop is gone from those two, but it still exists in this one a little bit. So that means I can take this one, turn it clockwise, and probably get rid of a little bit of that. Okay, I've taken away all of the slack in every one of those. Now you can just take a look at them and you'll see they all look pretty even. Now I can take my throttle and kick it open just a little bit. Like that. You can see that there's that little bit of spring-loaded slop that's built into that top mechanism comes into play on all of them. So that's good enough for now. That's basically all somewhat equal. So we'll just tighten this with our thumbs. And that is ready to bolt onto the engine. And then we'll put the synchronizer that we're going to make later onto these screws right here that we'll pull out on each one of the carbs. Right there, there's a little screw you can pull out. You can screw in a place to measure the vacuum on each carburetor. We'll make a manometer in a later video once I get the engine running. Got to buy an exhaust and all that. But so these are all ready to go onto the engine now. Yippee! All right, here we are with the boots lubed up with a little silicone lube, and gave a little blood there for this procedure. Anyway, you got to pay attention to how these go on because they're numbered. This one says 1 and then it says 4, so it's either going to go on 1 or 4, and there's a dimple on the inside of this that matches up with this. It's recessed in. It's an actual dimple. So the 1 is facing up on this side. I'm going to go ahead and push that one on there. Damn, slippery stuff. And we'll rotate it around so that the seam, there's a mold mark. I want that to just be pretty much right at this point so that it's straight across each one of the mold marks. Now let's see, there's going to be another one that says 1 and 4. Let's go over here to the 4 side and put this one on. We'll rotate that the same way, make sure that it's got the seams pretty much straight across. Now we go to cylinders number 2 and 3. These two are labeled 2, 3. So let's see, we got cylinder number 2 right here. The dimple is inside on that one. So what happens when you do this properly is you end up with the boots all nice and evenly spaced all the way across. I'm going to rotate this one just a little bit. There we go. And then this one we want number 3 facing up, and that side goes on the engine. Now that should be everything the way it goes. rotate that around a bit. Now let's get the carburetors over here for a quick test fit. Bring these over. We're not going to put them on yet because we've got to put the clamps on. But you can see how the barrels line right up with the rubber now. Okay, I have plenty of silicone lube in each one of the rubber boots. There's silicone lube on each one of the carburetor barrels. And I can already see, as I look across like this, that I think these two right here, they need to rotate. Let's see which way. Yeah, they got to rotate down a little bit. So when you look across here, they should all be even. That's a little too far. You could take a board and lay it on here, and they should be all parallel with each other and all against the board in the same plane. That's pretty close. All right, let's give that a try. Okay, they're all lining up pretty good. Now it's just a matter of giving everything a good shove. And if you're on the center stand, be careful you don't push forward too far and push your damn bike off the center stand. That just wouldn't be any fun at all. Now they're all on there all the way. You can give them a good wiggle around. Make sure they're pushed on as far as they can go. Oh, gotta make sure they're all the way home. The one on that side, number 4 is, but number 1 isn't. So I'm gonna get up here and pull. Oh, there we go. That did it. Whew. Let's check the throttle throw here. Looks like it clears everything just fine. It's a pretty tight fit in there. Now we can tighten up the clamps. Get the ones over on this side first. You might find for the inboard ones a really long shank screwdriver will come in handy. And we'll get the ones on this side. See what I mean about this long screwdriver? Really helps a lot. That's it. The carbs are on the engine. Wow, awesome sauce. Carburetors on the engine. I'm getting excited now. Now all we need is some ignition, spark plugs, a battery, some coils, plug wires, exhaust system, some fuel, and we can fire this baby up. Yeah, well, it's going to be a little while before that happens, but I think the next thing will be to get the ignition on the other side on, and then we'll mount up the coils and go from there. But it's coming along nicely. Good to be back on the project. I'm seeing some real progress now. That engine was the biggest hurdle of all, getting all those pieces and parts put together, and this pretty much wraps it up. It's a complete engine now. Well, other than just some externals like the ignition, as I mentioned. I'll probably put a Mac pipe on it for starters. They're reasonably priced. They're okay. They like to rust quick, but the one on the Sabre works okay. And less than 400 bucks. I mean, for a 4-into-1, what the hell? Not so bad. I think we are just wrapping it up for another week. Thanks for watching, and thanks for any donations. And don't forget the Ask Dino episode coming up. Go to the home page, the one where you just click on Hack a Week and you see my home page channel. All the way over to that side will be a little About link. Click About. All the way further over to the left will be a thing that says Send a Message. And in there you can send me a message, ask me a question. And on the first episode of Ask Dino, I'll try to answer that question for you. You can also follow me on Twitter at MakerDino, or look for my Facebook page. I have a Hack a Week Facebook page. You can follow there. You could also message me there if you like. So that wraps it up. Till next time. Hey, welcome back.